Welcome, patrons, to the Writer's Well question and answer. We are so excited to do this. We have a bunch of questions. We're going to see how many of them we can blast through today for you because we're busy, you're busy, but I know you have questions and it's really fun to hang out with you in this particular way. So Jay has the questions and he's going to just kick us off.
Yeah, super cool. We haven't done this in a while, so
Yeah.
excited to get in here. And I just kind of have them randomly thrown in here, and some of these I haven't even read yet
Me
carefully.
too.
So it should be fun to it's kind of in the spirit of our show, right?
Yep. And we're also coming off the high of recording our last show, which is probably the funniest show we've ever done. So I'm still giggly. I don't know about you.
I am too. Yep. And if you don't know what we're talking about, you will by the time you hear it and listen to this.
You will know which one it is.
Yep. All right. Well, let's start with a question from Susie. Susie says, hi there. Is good enough good enough? You can revise forever, adding bits, taking bits out, and moving stuff around, even if you don't feel it is the very best you can do. Should you just put it out there and move on to the next? I suppose it amounts to overcoming the fear of derision. And in parentheses, I'm working on the second draft at this point and envisage at least another one. Thank you both for all your honest, open-hearted inspiration.
Yeah, thank you, Susie, for the question. I am of the opinion that this is my personal opinion, and Jay, I'll be really curious to see what you say. A lot of times I feel like my works, when I finally put them out, are just good enough, but I can't make them any better. I get to the point where I cannot make them any better. And sometimes I go through 7 or 8 drafts, sometimes it's 10, sometimes I've like my Pack Up the Moon was 37 drafts, and I don't recommend that. But, so I don't like good enough, but good enough has to be good enough sometimes, and it has to go up, and we could really revise forever. But for me, it's when I start, niggling with really small words and I can't see anything else structurally to change is when I know it's time to hand it off to an editor and start working on it that way. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with you. I have the same approach. The way I think about it is that you're never done. I could pull out any book, published or unpublished, manuscript or draft or revision, and there's always something I could do to it. And so
Yeah.
at a certain point, I think good enough is good enough. I think you have to be confident that it's your best work and you've done the best you can do on it. But at a certain point, you've got to let it go. And I think it can be a form of resistance. I mean, that's what perfection
Absolutely.
is, right? It's resistance. It's
Yeah.
fearing the response you're going to get when you put something out there. So I do think that at a certain point, as Seth Godin would say, you do have to just ship it, and it is what it is.
Yeah. Good question.
Nice. All right, let's take a look at the another question here. Okay, this one I thought was interesting because I know where it came from. This is from Harley. Stephen Pressfield has been putting out these things called jabs, which are really cool if people are interested. But I think this is where it came from. She said that I recently read a piece where Stephen Pressfield shared his reasons for why he writes, in which he viewed his writing as an as-if statement. For example, I write as if Stephen King will be reading my arc, or I write as if people will be reading my work 500 years from now. I would like to know, only if you and Rachel are comfortable doing so, how would each of you respond to the following statement? I write as if.
Oh, that's good. All right. So since you've had time to think about it, why don't you go first?
Okay, this might sound weird, but I write as if this is the only book I'll be able to read for the rest of my life.
Oh, Doug, that's a good question.
Like
That's a good answer. I want that answer.
Yeah, it's that simple. Like I probably won't ever read the book again, but if I was on a desert island, I want that book. I want to be able to like entertain myself with that book for the rest of my life.
That just really kind of solidified something in my head about this next book that I want to write. There is a danger, I think, sometimes, and I think it's a very real danger of saving things for other books.
Yeah.
And I don't think you should ever do that. And I've always thought you shouldn't do it, but I'm always kind of drawn to it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That's another argument for not saving anything. I want to write as if people 500 years from now, in a way to make them want to sit down and have coffee with me.
Nice.
I want, because there's I'm really into May Sarton right now, and I'm just devastated that she's dead, and all I
Yeah.
want to do is sit down with May Sarton because she has my heart and my soul, but in her own package, and I want to make that connection with somebody after I'm dead too. So
Oh, that's nice. I like that. Very nice. All right. This one is from Pranathi. Um, she said, any advice on finding a writing genre for someone who cross reads a lot for a newbie, or just start and worry about the rest later? Thanks for your help.
I think in terms of thinking about genre, I mean, especially you, Jay, you are really all about this, thinking about genre and writing to market. There is something I think to be said for just starting and seeing what is most fun to write.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that, extrapolating which genre you want to write in, maybe write 30 pages and see what genre you land in. But it has to be the one, like if you, maybe this would be an answer. If there are 3 books on the table at the bookstore and you can only afford one, what's the genre in different genres, what's the genre you would pick, then write in that one.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was seriously going to say, when you go into the bookstore, you're going to go in all the different sections, but which one do you go to first?
Yes.
That's the one.
Yes.
And you can't be wishy-washy about it, and don't try tricking yourself. You can read multiple genres, but there's usually one that really lights your fire, and that's where you got to start.
Yeah.
And it might not be where you end up. Like, I think that's a good point too.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was horror, but I've really sort of moved away from being a horror writer, not because I don't like it, but because as a writer, it's not what drives me the same way it is a reader. But that's where I had to start.
That's so funny that you say that too, because I've written all the genres, and I know you're still surprised that that memoir is my favorite thing to write, and that is where I go first in the bookstore with that, because I'm not looking, no one's looking over my shoulder to see what I do.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Good answer.
All right. Next question. This one is from Sandy. She says, have you ever lost your mojo? And if so, how did you get it back?
This question means a lot because everyone has lost their mojo, I think, at times. When I have lost my writing mojo, it's because I've lost the mojo in everything else in my life. I don't lose my mojo, my writing mojo, and still I'm having a great time with family and friends, and I'm healthy, and I feel good about my spirituality. It's for me, losing my writing mojo is a symptom of depression.
Yeah.
That needs to be addressed. So yeah, because I was really feeling blocked, maybe a year and a half ago, and that was just a systemic problem, and I was blaming it on writing too much and losing my mojo, but I hadn't lost my mojo. I just lost myself for a while.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I think I lose my mojo every day. Like I see it as more as sort of self-doubt or lack of confidence, or that moment where you sit down and you're like, I'm typing and these words suck, and the story's not going anywhere, and the scene isn't going anywhere, and this book is going to suck. And I think the key there, though, for me, is that I just ignore it. And I just, I think we all lose our mojo. I think it's how you respond to that is what separates amateurs from pros. I think amateurs will tend to give up, or they'll wait for the muse, or they'll wait to be inspired. And pros just realize that's just part of the game, and you just keep going.
And I've been listening to Atomic Habits, and there's that whole part where he's talking about, the workouts that really matter are the workouts that you do on the days you feel like ass, and you can't run, you can't move, you just feel, not like you're sick or something, but like you just want to give up. And I was thinking about that in writing, in terms of writing, the days where I have felt the worst about writing and I've actually shown up and done the work. Those are the days where I've had really big breakthroughs sometimes. Yep. Just because I showed up. So the mojo, you can lose your mojo daily and pick it up daily.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This question is kind of related with, so it's a good follow-up. It's from Melissa. She says, I'm having a super, in caps, hard time sticking with the routine, and worrying about not being able to stick to a routine creates blocks that I can't seem to get past. How did you guys make a routine that you could stick with and be productive?
Oh, my answer is not a good one. I mean, it's
not going to be what Melissa wants to hear.
It's not going to be what she wants to hear. But my very first routine that actually worked was when I committed. It was it was 2008. So I already had a book written. I'd written a book in 2006 and had been farting around with it for a year and a half. And in 2008 is when I finally made the commitment to myself that I would sit down at between 4 and 4:30 every morning before I left the house at 5:15. And that was the first time I got regular about what I was doing. And it literally changed everything in my entire world. And it was, it's an illustration of, my favorite quote is attributed to Goethe, but it's at the moment of commitment, the universe conspires to assist you.
Yeah.
And it's so true. And I finally committed for the first time in my 34-year-old life that I would be a writer. And everything changed. What about you?
Yeah, it's again, like, I know Melissa isn't going to want to hear this, and some people might say this is tough love, but Melissa, it doesn't change until you decide to change it. Like, there's no magic. It's just, you have to hit a moment where you say, I want this bad enough that I'm going to stick to my routine. And of course things come up and life happens.
Yeah.
I mean, so within reason, but I think what Melissa's, that's not what she's asking about. She's not asking necessarily about those moments that you can't control. She's talking about the day in, day out. How do you get yourself into the place where you know you're supposed to be? And you just have to do it. If you want it bad enough, you'll do it. And that's true, I think, in life for a lot of things. Like, you will sacrifice and you will change behaviors for things that you really want, and things that you don't really want, you won't.
And exactly. And I'm not necessarily advocating for getting up early every morning, that butt ass early every morning, but there is something to be said that, we assign meaning to places and times.
Yes.
So, if 7 a.m. you're usually making breakfast and checking Twitter, it's going to be hard to write during that time.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody's doing shit at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And that was my time to write. And when I got up, there was no other place in my brain. Only writing existed then. And that time of morning still exists for me as solely writing. Yeah.
I have that moment. It's not 4:30. Like, for me, it was, at one point it was 4:30, but it's still that we've talked about this in our morning routines, but I have that space in my morning where it is way front loaded, and there's really nothing else I should be doing or could be doing. Mm-hmm. And I've even planned it at a time where my family commitments should be non-existent. And again, that's not always possible depending on what stage of life you're in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think you have to be really honest with yourself and find that moment of time in your day and make that sacred. And then it's just up to you to hold up to that. Like, you just got to. Even
if it's only 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah.
To start, just regularity. Yeah. Good question.
Yeah. Excellent.
Hard question.
Yeah, that is a tough one. It's a tough one to answer, because I know people want, like, they just want a hack or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not what it comes down to, really. All right, let's see here. This is a kind of a specific one. This is very different. This is from J-A-Y. He says, what's your process / criteria for selecting a narrator for your audiobooks? Do you worry about how popular they are / if they have a large following, or do you go with the narrator that aligns closest to what you hear in your mind? Any other major watch outs? Thanks.
I've had 4 different narrators, including myself. And for all of them, I chose them because I loved what they sounded like when I listened to their other books. Another big criteria for me is I read their reviews on Audible. There's a place on Audible where you can pull up the narrator, you can drop down everything they've done, and then when you open it, there's a rating just for narrative skill, the narration skill.
Yep. And
I would look at that, and I would read every single comment. And there's always going to be sour grapes of somebody. I can't stand the way she sounds, but if the overall are 5 stars, then people are going to love it. My last narrator that I paid bank for her because I know her personally, and everybody loves her, and it's been great. So yeah. What about you?
Well, this is a bit of a cop out, but Zach makes all those decisions for our stuff, because I'm not an audiobook guy. I just can't get into audiobooks, and if you don't listen to audiobooks, you have no business deciding on narrators.
Agreed.
Yeah. I will say that I think if in certain circumstances you don't have a choice, like we have books that we sold to Tantor, I have books with Glenn I sold to Podium, and you don't get to pick.
I have like 3 of those where I didn't get to pick. Well, actually they gave me 3 choices and 2 were abysmal, and I was like, go with this one. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think generally speaking, if you're a fan of their work and if you listen to their work and you know what they do and it aligns with your, with your work, then I think that's a good choice. I have looked at like followings of narrators, and I don't know how much that really matters. I think it's better to get a narrator that matches your story than it is one who has a big following.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, next question. This is from Kat. Kat says, what are your thoughts on dictation? I plan on getting a new PC soon anyway, and while the software and recorder are a bit of an upfront investment, I could try dictation while driving to and from work. This will help me get more words while working full time, but I also worry about the quality of the words as well. Ideas?
I have a lot of thoughts about this. Do you want to go first?
No, go ahead. I'd like to hear
them. Well, first and foremost, this is brand new news to me that I got from IndieOnCon. Dragon is no longer supporting Dragon for Mac. So the flippin' program that I bought 6 months ago for $300, which was actually working, is now not even loading on my computer and will no longer be serviced. So I'm pissed off at Dragon.
That sucks.
It does suck. And I had been using Dragon for PC on a cheap PC, and then I would send it over to myself. Mm-hmm. That was a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So what I've decided is I really, as to my opinion on dictation, I think it's great. I've written one full book with it, and I use it a lot for things like blog posts and newsletters, especially when I'm on the go. But what people are really liking right now is the Dragon Anywhere, which I think is a monthly subscription service, and it's on your phone, and you use some kind of, headset. So I'm going to give that a try in my next dictation attempt. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to flush Dragon down the toilet, because seriously, I'm irritated. But it's so good. Yeah. I think it's such a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. I have mixed feelings about dictation. I've done it on and off, and I have a great setup for it, and it works well. I think the part of the question, or part of the answer rather, is that no matter what I dictate, I know I'm going to have to spend more time cleaning it up than I would if I used a keyboard. So it's a trade-off, right? Definitely. And now I'm to the point where my typing muscles are so strong. I don't know how many words per minute I type, but it's probably a lot. It's probably north of 100, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. And so I can type so fast, and that first draft is so clean for me now after all the words, that I'm sort of moving away from dictation. But if I were in that situation where I was looking to steal moments in the day, by all means, getting shitty words through dictation would be better than getting none and losing that opportunity.
For me, I want to do it because I'm now walking an hour a day, and right now I'm listening to audiobooks and podcasts and stuff, but I prefer to shift that time into actual writing. But I agree with you. My typing is so fast, and I believe that like using your hands equally is better for your hands than cleaning up with the mouse for an hour. You're going in and putting in that comma and taking out that apostrophe, and which you do a lot of in Dragon. So it does. I've timed it. It saved me a little bit of time, but not very much time in the long run. Yeah.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think a few years ago when dictation was really hot, everyone thought, "Oh my God, I'm going to triple, quadruple my word count." And like, on one hand, that's technically true, but you do have to spend more time cleaning it up.
It's so ugly.
And it's not even the inaccuracies. It's that I think your speech is different than what's coming out of your hands. So it's not that the words are wrong. It's that you still
that happens to me when it lands on the page and I read it with my writer's eye. Mm-hmm. It's wrong because it was my spoken voice.
Yeah.
And I have to fix that because my writers are expecting my writing voice.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Good question.
I don't know if we gave him a good answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we got a couple more here. We might be able to knock all these out.
Let's do it.
Here. This next one is from Maggie. Maggie went to a plotting writing tips all-day workshop last weekend. I'm going to leave out the names. I think I should. And whoever was running it said, if it takes you more than 9 months to finish a book, then it's a hobby. And Maggie thought that was reasonable. And this person went on to say, if you've been working on a novel and haven't finished it for almost 2 years or more, you should print it, delete it off your computer, and put it in a drawer because it's not worth finishing. Move on to a new, fresh story. Curious if you would agree with that. If so, at any stage in your career or only at certain ones, do you have a different personal metric for when you walk away from a draft?
Hmm. I disagree. I disagree because I don't ever want to tell anybody what their practice is. I believe that, we can all, a draft takes exactly the same amount of time, whether it's over the course of 3 months or over the course of 3 years, you're spending the same amount of butt in chair, hands on keyboard time. It's just you're a better procrastinator if you're taking 3 years. But what if that's your practice? And then mothers with children who have special needs, it might take them 3 years to finish a draft, So I don't think it can be that clear cut. But in terms of, shit or get off the pot, yes, if you can't finish the book in 2 or 3 years and you're trying, maybe it's just not working and it's time to start the next one.
The key word there is hobby, right? So like if you are writing
that's
on
the
the
key word.
weekends, or if you have a full-time job and family commitments, then it is there's nothing wrong with that, but you have a hobby. Because you're not bringing an income to pay your bills for it. In that case, I totally agree. If it's a hobby and you're 2 years in and you still don't have a draft, then something's really wrong. Like even with your hobby, like something's wrong. But if you are, but if it's not I'm sorry, I got that backwards. If you're doing it full time and it takes you 2 years,
I knew that's what you meant. Yes,
that's a problem, right?
Yes.
If it's a hobby and it takes you 2 years, it's not a problem.
It's fine.
Right?
Exactly. But yeah, if it is a profession, I have friends who are paid enough to write one book at a time for, one book a year. Yep. And they are fucking around most of the time.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then they end up writing it in the last 2 months of their deadline because that's how long it takes them.
Yep. Yeah, I know it. All right, we got a couple more here. One from Janet. She says, when you recognize imposter syndrome has a hold on you, how do you move past it? Do you have one solid way of getting around it or a few different processes to work through it?
What about you?
This is the same answer I gave to Melissa's question, or maybe it wasn't Melissa's question, about feeling stuck or
yes,
like
that's the same answer that I have.
It's the same answer. It's like
just do it.
You keep going. I don't. Yeah. Imposter syndrome comes up all the time. Almost every single podcast I start, every time I put a blog post out, I have imposter syndrome. Every time I take money from a client, I have imposter syndrome. I just keep going. That's all you can do.
And people always ask me, how do you turn that voice off? And I just, realize over and over again that it never turns off. It's just always back here yapping at me, just always, always, always. And I just kind of muffle it by doing other things. I don't pay it attention. If I pay it attention, it gets bigger and stronger. And if I ignore it, it gets bored and wanders away.
Yeah. You just have to keep going. That's all you can do. Yeah.
Keep going, making crappy words.
Yeah.
that you'll fix later.
All right, we got one more now. Our good buddy, our first commenter, Christopher, threw like 8 questions at us, and they were all like these ones that we could go on for years talking about. But I want to at least answer one of his. So I thought this could be. We'll pick one to kind of end this. And I started answering this in the comments, and he corrected.
Oh yeah, and he was like, "No, this is for the show."
Yeah. Does a writer need to be starving and live in a garret with no heating or live in a trailer park to be successful?
Hell no, Christopher. You set us up for that one.
Yeah, I think Christopher knows.
Is a myth. I mean,
yeah,
it's also, it happens, of course, but I mean, I think have to.
The flip side, the realistic flip side is that if you earn your income with words, it's hard.
Yeah. Period.
It's hard, right? It's just hard. It's really hard, no matter what sort of version of creativity you're using that involves words, whether it's journalistic or a novelist or whatever. It's not easy. But I don't believe that we have to suffer as artists. I totally reject that.
I could not be in more agreement. And if money, wealth, and fame comes our way, more power to us,
Yeah. Yep. And in fairness to Christopher, he mentioned A Movable Feast by Hemingway and On Writing by Stephen King. And both of those predated the ebook revolution. And so I think like it was a different world then. So I'm not saying they were wrong. I think for the time that they were in, maybe that might have been a more acceptable understanding of what it meant to be an artist, but I don't believe that's the case in 2019.
Agree. Totally agree. and I
Well, that's
love
it.
Christopher. Yay!
Yeah,
That was super
we
fun.
got them all, huh?
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
let's take this moment then to sincerely thank our patrons, because not only do you afford us the time to do this and the hosting and everything else, but it is just a solid vote of confidence um, in the fact that you like us, that you want to hang out with us, that we like you. It's really the most wonderful gift, and we never ever take it for granted. We accept it as the gift that you mean it as, and I think it's really beautiful.
I do too. We're so grateful and so appreciative, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts, sincerely.
Yay. Talk to you soon.
Bye, patrons.
Bye.